Okay, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're sitting. Welcome. My name's Anthony Adorno with DeGarmo, and we're here to talk mindful preparation, enhancing FSC confidence before the donation ask. Thank you all for coming. I do appreciate it. We've got a really interesting talk for you today. For those of you who haven't been here before, the webinars that we host are designed to be a high-value resource for supporting your professional development on an ongoing basis. And so to that end, we're always trying to advocate for tips and strategies and best practices on topics that affect you all on a daily basis, with insights from peers and leadership in the OPO community. So it's a great opportunity to learn and share information and continue to develop a strong network with your peers nationally. The kind of the concept for today's talk is the first of a three-part series. And so over the past year, we've gotten a lot of requests to talk about objections to donations from families as part of the conversation process, and what the strategies are for overcoming those objections. And so we've designed a multi-part program that's specifically designed to address some of these issues. And so today, we're going to be talking about how to avoid a no. So not necessarily how do we deal with the objection, but how do we put ourselves in a position to try to increase the likelihood of a yes and decrease the likelihood of a no. And so that'll be the concept of our talk today. I'm joined, as always, by members of my team, Tracy Hafner and Chad Carlisle, who will be behind the scenes answering any questions that you all might have and aligning the questions for our speakers when we open it up to Q&A at the end of the session. So at any point during our talk today, if you have a question for our speakers, please just use the chat or the Q&A dialog box, type your question in there, and then we will get to it near the end of the session, last 10, 15 minutes or so. So I'd like to open by introducing our two speakers who are going to be sharing their vast information and experience with you today. So first is Derek Mushimiunda, who is the Donation Advocacy Coach and Family Services Supervisor at Honor Bridge in North Carolina. He has over 20 years of experience and has previously served as a family support coordinator and as the Family Services Education Coordinator. In his current role, Derek provides real-time feedback to FSCs and guides challenging donation discussions to improve services for donor families and hospitals and have a positive impact on authorization efforts. Outside of work, Derek manages a foundation supporting communities in Zimbabwe and leads mission trips. He's known for his positivity and is a trusted mentor and friend. Derek believes in the power of collaboration, often saying, "Alone we run fast, but together we can run far." So please welcome Derek. Thank you for joining us, Derek. We're also honored to be joined by Shantae Williams-Taylor. She has been a member of Life Gift Team since 1999 and is currently president of the S. William Taylor Corporation, focusing on coaching, consulting, and leadership development. She's a graduate of Western Governors University and obtained her MBA in 2020 and a Master of Science Management and Leadership in 2018. Prior to joining Life Gift, she worked as the Assistant Director, Manager of the Intensive Care and Coronary Care at Memorial Hermann Fort Bend Medical Center. She's a certified transplant procurement coordinator, certified critical care nurse, and member of the American Association of Critical Care Nurses. She has served on the AOPO Procurement Action Committee from 2012 to 2018 and served as the Donation Family Services Council Chair and co-chair from 2019 to 2021. So please welcome Shantae as well. So before we get into our panel discussion, I wanted to just spend a few minutes talking a little bit about the connection between the work that we're doing today and some of the national research that we had done some time ago. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Just a second. So as we begin, I just want to remind everybody that one of the major outcomes that came out of that research project was that most of the variability in donation authorization rates is due to individual FSC performance. And what that means is when we did a multi-level analysis, we looked at the impact of OPO regions and specific OPO locations as moderators of authorization rates, meaning, are you more likely to have higher authorization rates in one OPO region than another? Or are you more likely to have higher authorization rates in one OPO location versus another? And the research was really clear that OPO region doesn't make a difference. Only 2% of the variance in authorization rates was explained by the region that you're in. A very small percentage, 23%, was explained by the specific location that you work in. So some OPOs, as a function of policies or processes or procedures, do have higher authorization rates on average than others. But 75% of the variability is due to the individual FSC. So you are the ones who determine, who have the greatest impact on whether a family is going to say yes to donation. And so while there are a number of things that affect donor conversations, from the policies, from the processes, from the procedures, it's the people, it's you, it's your interpersonal style and approach in connecting with those families and building trust that is most likely to have an impact on their likelihood to say yes to donation. And so as we go back and we reflect on that work, for those of you who have been through training or who have seen presentations on this model before, you know that there are 6 core interpersonal elements that affect authorization likelihood throughout the conversation process. And we're going to focus on 2 of those today primarily because they're the most likely to impact the likelihood of authorization before the conversation even begins. So what we do to prepare for that conversation can have a profound impact on whether a family is more likely to say yes or no very early on. And so when we've done our training and we go out and we meet with everybody in person and we talk about this model and really what it means and how it's operationalized, one of the things that we've found is that those coordinators who overemphasize analytical thinking sometimes have the likelihood to try to script their conversations in advance and are really challenged if the family asks questions or that conversation goes in a way that they didn't expect. So they're really leveraging too much analytical thinking and trying to anticipate everything that's going to happen as part of that conversation. And that may result in a lack of ability to really connect with that family and to be present as part of that conversation. And so we're going to talk about how to find balance as you prepare to have that conversation. Similarly, those coordinators who don't really leverage independence, who cannot advocate for themselves in gathering information, taking ownership of that process in order to prepare, knowing who to talk to, going to speak with them, rather than waiting for information to come to them, may be less prepared for that conversation with the family. And may erode that family's confidence in the process, which again may be more likely to lead to an objection. So again, some of these things, we're not here talking about how to try to get a yes right away, but how do we avoid a no? What can we do in advance that might help us avoid the likelihood that a family may object to donation authorization? So with that said, I'm going to bring us back, and I'd like to spend a few minutes getting information from our panel, their thoughts based on their experience on some of these issues. And Shantae, I think we'll just start with you. Obviously,
Sure.
Derek, weigh in wherever you want to here. But when we talk about like the key elements of preparing for that conversation for the family service coordinators, what do you believe those elements are?
Hi, Anthony. Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on this panel. It's something that really just resonates and stands out key for me. It's about our presence. And the presence really begins even before we get there. So I like to go back a little bit and talk about the individual, the FSC, in preparation for that day and when they are going to be involved, and knowing that they have an assignment to go somewhere. It starts with the mindset and where that individual is on that given day, that they're planning to go on site to a hospital and to engage with the healthcare team as well as the family. It begins with self. And where the mindset is, the awareness about self and where you are in terms of where your confidence is, in terms of engaging with the healthcare team. How knowledgeable are you, even about donation? Are you that expert stepping into that space? And if you're not, do you know who or what your resources are to be able to help the healthcare team, but not only that, to help the family. But going back to the piece about self, I really think self-regulation is really important. Knowing when you have to pivot and step away. You talked about a script and being prepared. Many times we have to be prepared for plan A, B, and C because we may have something planned, but when you meet that family, you may see something different. So being able to pivot when you need to pivot. I think it's also important that that coordinator is showing up with empathy and showing that compassion and they're authentic as they are going in to meet with that family. So I do think it starts with the individual and that person being confident and calm, walking into that space, knowing that even with all the information they receive, things could be differently, how they need to navigate and handle that. And then being willing to know when to stop talking and to actively listen and engage with that family, being attuned to their body language, and just being ready. And I know we're talking about the family, but we can't leave out the healthcare team because we're getting to them before we get to the family. So we have to navigate that also. So knowing how you're going to prepare walking into that space and how you are showing up in that space. So I'll talk about the gift of presence and how you are going to be.
Yeah, that's interesting. So many people feel like silence is a problem in conversations, and if you're not talking, then you're losing in a way, your objective. And sometimes, punctuating a conversation with silence can be powerful, and it really does allow the families to reflect on what you've already said, rather than trying to say more. So I definitely agree. Derek, any thoughts on what you believe some of the key elements are for preparation that may be different from what Shantae shared?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Brother Anthony. Um, Again, like Shantae said very well, when you prepare yourself, again, going back to what Brother Anthony said, sometimes even when you are in that room with the family, silence can be speaking as well. If you can just be able to take a moment just to be with that family and just have your body language speak loud and clearly that you are there with them and you can feel part of what they are going through, though you may not exactly be in their shoes, but for them to be able to see you and say, this person cares enough to be in this space. Because what you want to show is difference between you and those who have come in before you, who have possibly and probably came in and just talked about things that were to be done. This is the next thing. This is the next thing. This is the next thing. but you are there to listen to them and have the family guide you. And when the family guides you, you can be able to pick where is the best time ever to bring up donation with the family, because the family will educate you when it is appropriate for you to bring donation. But many times we find ourselves as FSC, we can be in the room for 2 minutes and we can feel like we have been in there for 20 minutes or an hour, because we already rehearsed so much that everything that we take in the room, if it just doesn't fall right, we are thrown off. So sometimes when you come in the space with the family, just know you are coming into a grieving family, a family that's in the wilderness, a family that would not want to be there if they didn't have to be there, a family that's going through grief. And people can also grieve very differently. And just to accept their ways of grief as well, and to know that this is what suits this family best. And then you work with them from there and acknowledge that family for where they are coming from.
Anthony, I'd like to add on to that,
Yeah, sure,
something
go
that
ahead.
is so important when I think about what Derek said, and walking into that space with that family. We have to remember this is about them. So it's so important in your preparation that you're not taking your stuff into the room with this family. Whatever that stuff is, whether it's whatever's going on at home, whatever may be going on at your organization. Maybe there was a situation where it was an unfavorable conversation with the boss or colleague, or the healthcare team. Those are things that you have to place aside and focus on. What's important right then and there is your presence, being foremost attuned to that family and where they are and what they need. So key.
Yeah, absolutely, and that goes back to some strategies that Nika Short had presented in this kind of forum a few months ago as well, about self-regulation and kind of understanding your frame of mind and getting yourself in a good space before you even walk into that room, because how you walk into that room and what you say in the very first few minutes has a profound impact on the impression that it makes with that family. You guys talked a little bit about communicating with the healthcare team and to try to determine the family dynamics and to gather as much information as you can before going in and having that conversation. So we talk about analytical thinking and independence, and you don't want to script what you say. You don't want to try to memorize your pitch, so to speak, to that family about why donation is so important. And you also want to be an effective advocate to go out and get information. How do you determine who you should be reaching out to, and what does that outreach actually look like?
Yeah, I think when you prepare yourself, going back to what Chantel said, when you prepare yourself going on site, you have to prepare yourself and tell yourself, I am the expert in what I do. And whoever has a question for me, I am going to be able to answer from the bottom of my heart, and be able to express that deeply. So when I get on site, the thing that I would like to see myself do, or an FSC do, is to seek the bedside nurse. If you haven't gone through the unit secretary first, and be able to find out who is the bedside nurse. If you haven't spoken to the nurse already on the phone, but you may still need that secretary, because that unit secretary knows everything else that's going on in that unit and can be able to tell you when that nurse is busy or not, or how to bring that nurse to you without disrupting that nurse, because The last thing you want to do is to go and barge when that nurse is busy and she is overloaded, and then she already has an attitude towards you, not because of what you have done, but because of what she's going through as well. So the timing is key. When do I approach the nurse to ask about what's going on and introduce myself? Do they already know me on that unit, that I'm just going to go and say, oh, Julie, I'm here, and they know why I am there, or I'm going into a very new unit that I've never been before. And when I walk in, they're saying, who is that who has come into this unit? And everybody is eager to know who you are. And so with that being said, the introduction is key. You have to articulate clearly why you are there and that they have invited you into their space by the call they made to your organization to say there's brain death testing that's going to occur, a withdrawal of support that's going to happen. When you can be able to articulate that clearly, then you can be able to then work with that bedside nurse, if it's the bedside nurse, if it's the medical doctor, if it's the chaplain, if it's the social worker, and all these disciplines will give you a different perspective. If it's the nurse, the bedside nurse will give you from her experience at the bedside. The doctor will give you his experience from the meeting they had with the family. The chaplain will give you their perspective from how they have worked with the family, come in and pray with the family and see where the family is. So when I get to where I am seeking this information, I also tell myself I have to acknowledge the care team for the work they are doing and say, I know this is a very tragic day, very busy day. It's a heavy day. How are you doing? Just ask them a question like that. Then they can breathe in and out and say, oh, you have time to ask them how they are also doing. Then that helps you even connect with them from the get-go, that they know you care. But when I also ask them questions, I am not going to go into the minutiae of all the questions. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of questions, because when you do too much of asking too many questions, you get information overload. When you get information overload, what it does for you, it creates anxiety in you. When they tell you this family has been beating walls, now you are like, oh my goodness, can I get into that space? When they tell you that the possibility that this father killed the baby, his baby, oh, now you are judgmental also in your mind. When they tell you, oh my goodness, if you heard what they were saying, you are fearful now. So sometimes you shut those things out by not getting too much information. Just trust you are working with a grieving family. You are going to meet them where they are and walk with them gently in their wilderness journey, holding their hand to help them see a silver lining. And when you get into that space, remember, a slow yes is better than a quick no, because you don't want to get in there and be moved by your emotions and quickly get to asking the questions about donation before you take time to breathe in and out. That's when silence sometimes is important. That's when you can handshake everybody in the room and by names and ask them how are they doing, and then repeat to them afterwards and say, John, I remember you said this. John, I remember you grew up together. And that because what answers you may get from this family may surprise you, may come from the little Johnny in the corner that you never expected to be the one who is going to say yes to donation for everything and change the atmosphere for you.
That's really interesting, Derek. I love the idea of the slow yes versus the quick no, and this reinforces what we were talking about over preparing, and so it sounds like you want to know enough to be able to go in with a level of confidence about the family dynamics in that case, but not so much that it affects how you would advocate for donation, so that it doesn't detract from your message of inspiration for that family. So that finding that balance, I think, it's not easy, and it's going to be different in every situation, and it's going to be different for every coordinator on the call. And as we're kind of talking about this, I just want to acknowledge that when we've done these trainings in the past, and we go out on site and we meet with the teams, and we kind of talk about what too much or too little of a behavior might look like. One of the things that we have discovered is that we talk about independence and advocacy and being able to own decisions and be confident and know who to speak to. Part of that does come from experience. And so for those of you who are sitting in the audience who may have looked at a report, that talks about what your strengths and opportunities are, if you've got an opportunity to improve your level of independence and decision making, but you're relatively new in your role, expect that should improve over time as you become more familiar with the processes and the procedures that you follow. You will be able to be a more effective advocate and leverage that independence over time. So that is one of the elements of this framework that is at some level experience based. And so don't agonize over it if you're a very early career professional in this space. Give it some time, and you'll have an opportunity to develop that confidence. Shante, anything in addition to what Derek had to say about that, and just in terms of how are we balancing our preparation and really connecting and setting a positive tone for that donation conversation?
Again, I think it's so important that, we all have our trainings and we all have things that we've been trained to say or to do, and there's a process in place. But having the ability and knowing how to pivot when you need to pivot, it's not cookie cutter. Every family is unique and different, and every family grieves different and in their own way. And then within that family, every individual in their own way, and even the healthcare team. And I think that, just being aware of that and being confident in navigating that, knowing when you have to shift is so important, and just paying attention to the nonverbal cues and in terms of when you're meeting with that family and fully assessing what their needs are. I mean, it's so important that with all of the things that we get, like Derek said, all of the information that we get, you're doing your own assessment. You're meeting that family where they are. And, you hear all of those stories that they've done this, like Derek said, they've done that. But you get in there and meet that family. And I've had so many coordinators come in our room and go, wow, that family was so nice.
Mm-hmm.
That family was, encouraging me, as the person offering donation to them. So I really think it's important to, you have all of the information. I used to tell the coordinators, just put it back here and then just go in free and clear and just meet them. And see where they are and to go from there. I'd like to share very quickly an experience we had with a family where the family was upset. It was a Hispanic family. This is his young man's sister. And at the hospital, once we had an opportunity to sit down and meet with him because this was the first person authorization and we were ready to go to the OR and he is stopping things. But he was upset because he said every time from the first unit that his sister was in now to the second unit, every time he showed up, the hospital was 3 deep with police officers outside his sister's room. And it was all because of how he looked. He had 3 teardrops on his face and he was tatted all over his neck. And they were judging and basing that he was going to be a person that was going to act out. And so he was angry because of how he felt he and his family were treated and disrespected. And so
Mm-hmm.
just creating the space for him to be able to speak and share where he was based on him being judged, we were able to continue to go forward with donation. But again, we have to be aware of our own biases. We also have to be aware of the biases that, the healthcare team may have based on the individual and what they're seeing, or maybe how they're behaving. And as Derek said, every family grieves differently. So hitting the wall is not a personal threat towards an individual. It's that person expressing themselves and being comfortable with those things. So mind you, yes, there are situations. Safety is always important, but just being aware how you're going to navigate in those situations.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. And it actually kind of dovetails nicely into kind of where I was hoping this conversation would go from here. And that is, despite our best efforts and our recommendations now about, how we try to balance getting enough information about the family and the dynamics and the case itself in order to facilitate that conversation without allowing the noise that may be a distraction to effective advocacy. There are times when medical teams make assumptions about the family, like they're not going to donate, they won't say yes, this is not the right time to speak to them, or other things that may be going on in that environment as you're preparing to have your conversation. So how do you try to remove those assumptions, to manage those so that it doesn't impact how you set that tone with the family or what you say?
I think one of the things, especially in the DCD environments, because timing is so critical, and when families are in decision-making mode, and I think the healthcare team views that they're in decision-making mode for their processes or the things that they need to talk to them about, but donation is not one of those things. But donation is a part of end-of-life care. So if they're having those conversations, it's never really going to be the right or best time to introduce this topic for them. But as they're introducing, different levels of care, comfort, or even de-escalation, it's important that we have the opportunity to present that donation information. And what we've had conversations and said to physicians is that, many times we've spoken to families and they are done. And by the time we get here, so no, because they don't want to give the time. It's so important that the physicians hear the stories of those families that maybe were in their unit, where we talk to that family much later in the process. And what the family says, I wish you would have talked to me 2 days ago. Well, 2 days ago, the healthcare team was talking to them about end of life decisions. So that was our opportunity to be there. So sharing the stories with the physicians, I think, is important, and the nurses, so that you can bring them along to understand the importance of your presence and you being there, as that expert to offer that donation to them when that time is correct. Because at the end, when they're ready to turn off everything, it's too late. So
Yeah.
sharing the stories, I think, is important.
Derek, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, she said it so well, but again, to add on to that, it's critical that the care team members, every so often when we have donor cases that have good results from that unit or that hospital, we come back to them, we share with them the results of that, and especially of those cases that they may have questioned so much and so hard, and say this family wouldn't do it, wouldn't be agreeable to it, and then they can see that. And sometimes even, once in a while, there are some who are volunteers who may be willing to come to those units and say, you all have done such a good thing, this is what made me make that decision. I think it always continues to remind the care team members that even with donation is continuum of care. The care doesn't end with them. We know that sometimes they are also biased in their minds, because when they lose a patient, they also suffer from losing a patient, and they grieve also in that process. As they are grieving, that's why it is important when we come on site to be gentle, to be also be able to make good assessments. When is it that I should interact with them? When I do, What should I say quickly? And can I acknowledge them also for the, pain they are going through? Because sometimes our coming on the unit, to them, it means they have failed. So your presence on the unit to them is like, you are here now because we failed. So now with that combination, then it becomes, a friction between that. So we want to really just make sure that they are aware that when we come, it's really continuing to pass the baton to make something good come
Yeah.
out of the tragic situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think part of this too, when we think about how you go in and prepare and have a positive tone for this conversation, it really comes back to, at some level, your own confidence level in navigating that conversation with a family. And this is a big ask. This is asking a family for something in the most difficult time of their life, and in order to do that, requires confidence in it. And if you're timid or hesitant or uncertain when you kind of walk into that room, you're not really building a compelling case to inspire a donation authorization. And so, when we think about how do you build confidence as an FSC, knowing that you've got to go in there and you're the expert and you've got to go in there confidently. How do you build that confidence? Is it having affirmations that you look at before you go in? Is it having notes that you kind of reflect on? Is it trying to remember a time where you overcame an objection, or like what are the things that you might recommend the folks out there do to be as confident as they can when they walk into that room, to be the best advocate they can for donations?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sometimes some of the things that you can do is just to tell yourself, I'm the best person for this situation. When I get in there, I have something to offer this family. That when they leave this place, they are going to feel good that something their loved one is not going to be forgotten of. Something good has come out of this tragic situation. So I empower myself to empower the family, because like you say, they can pick up on you as you walk into the room, the way you knock on the door, the way you enter the room. They can sense and they can pick that, whether you are scared, nervous, uh, all kinds of things. They can pick that up very quickly. By the time you sit down, it's already a no or a yes with some families. So you have to be at a place where you are comfortable with being in an uncomfortable place, and be able to work from that place and make
Mm-hmm.
something good come out of that very tragic situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I would definitely add that, it comes back to that beginning piece. You, as that FSC walking into that space, your part of your confidence also comes that you are that expert, that you have the information, and, really being comfortable. I just say being comfortable in your own skin, walking in that space, whether it's working with a healthcare team or meeting with the family, that you have that level of confidence and confidence in your abilities and what you're bringing to this situation, what you're bringing into as your genuine, authentic, unique self. You are giving them you in this space, and when you're meeting with them. And that you is, your skills, knowledge, and abilities, and who you are as an individual, you're bringing that into this equation. So, again, how you're showing up when you're meeting them is so key, because it can make a difference in that engagement and how it carries forward.
Yeah, and it's important also to quickly identify when you walk in the room, be able to identify, do they have some of the basic needs they need in that room? Is that room so cold that you can quickly run back and get a blanket for them? Do they seem like they may need some water or Kleenex? Something that shows that you are that hospitable to them and you care about their well-being. Is there something I can do for you now that you haven't had done for you that you need done? Just small things like that. Then by so doing, it brings your anxiety down as much as it brings their anxiety down. And then you come to the same place where they see you as somebody who is on their level, who cares about their well-being as well. So from that point on, there are points of connectivity. If it's an African American family, depending if they have cornrows, if natural hair, braids, and things like that, that you can relate to and things you can talk about, and how they are handling their situation, and how you can talk about that and think points of connectivity will bring that storytelling time. The storytelling time is the time that will bring donation to the point where it's going to be seen as a very positive thing.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I'm wondering if before we transition over to the audience Q&A, and again, if you all out there have questions, please feel free to submit them, and we'll present them to the panel. I'm interested in your opinions. You brought up African American families. Like, how does cultural competence or language support, how do you integrate that into the preparation process for conversations? It has to have a pretty profound impact. So how do you do that well? What does that look like?
Well, I think it's really important that, when you're even before when you get on that unit and you identify that, there is a language barrier, ensuring that, you're utilizing an interpretive services, and that you have time to meet with that interpreter to understand if they've ever worked with someone from the OPO space to offer donation to a family. What does that experience look like? And if they haven't, it's the opportunity to give some education. And then a key thing is ensuring that what you're communicating to them, how you're communicating it to a family, ensuring that they're matching what you said and how you said it in that presentation with the family. I think it's really important that we are utilizing a language service, because there are many times the healthcare team is using a family member, and that's a heavy weight for a family member to have to carry a medical message, and a devastating message to their loved ones. And then the other thing is, how much of it are they really communicating to the family, because they don't want the family to experience the grief and pain. So we want to make sure that, we are utilizing a service to best support those families. And, Derek mentioned about the cornrows in an African American or Black family. I think it's just basically being aware of, where that family is, with, where they are from a spiritual, cultural space, and, how can you best support them in that and show the respect for whatever their cultural beliefs are, even from the aspects of, even for those rituals and things that need to be performed, even prior to going to the OR for a family that's moved towards donation, respecting their cultural considerations.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the language support services, that I found it interesting, and it's obviously very relevant that you're not just interpreting the words, but also kind of the sentiment behind them as well, and doing that in a way that reflects on the gravity of the situation and connects well and authentically with the family, and that might not be something that people are equipped to do just because they know how to translate, if it hasn't been done for that purpose before. So I think that is a really great call out, to just make sure that whoever is your resource for that service, to make sure that they're equipped and prepared to have the type of conversation that you'll be having with the family. It's really important.
Yeah,
Derek,
and like
go ahead, Derek.
I was just going to say, like Shante said, some things that can help with connectivity or connecting is small things sometimes. It's not big things at all. It's just being able to identify things that can mean something to somebody. I see Shante, I just say, my goodness, your name is beautiful. Tell me a little bit about your name. And then we start a conversation when things were all silent in there and it was hard to break the ice. Maybe it's a jersey that somebody's wearing for a football team, or maybe a cap with a sorority sign on it. And you say, oh my goodness, you are well, you have the cap with Alpha, Kappa, Alpha. People are like, oh my goodness, So there we are. We click just like that. By the time we get to the discussion about donation, they have embraced me. They are talking to me like I'm one of them. They are more willing now to talk anything that I can talk about. And even if they have any questions that may be sticky, now if I say, oh, why do you think John wouldn't have wanted to save lives and help others? Now they are not looking at it as if you are questioning them why. They are more like, we are talking. Then it gives you leverage so that you don't have that response from families where they just say no, and then you are stuck.
Yeah. Interesting. So we've had a couple of questions come in from the audience that I want to make sure we get to, and so I'll present what I can see in chat, or Tracy, if there's anything else that's come through that I'm not seeing, just let me know. So Chris asked, how do we handle it when we know it's time to at least have an initial conversation with the family, but the medical staff is pretty solid in their stance that it's not? Like, what does pushing the issue look like or sound like? So what are the things that you might say to the medical staff, that the care team, to advocate for a conversation?
Yeah, some of the things we have to say is more in terms of just being gently assertive, and then when you ask the care team some questions, you give reasons why. It is important to catch the family during that very space of time. And when you can be able to articulate that, you can also just gently say to the care team, this is how I see it, and this is how I have experienced this before. And this time looks like the best time to engage this family. How do you see it? Or how do you feel about it? So that you don't seem like you are dictating either, but you are telling them your experiences and how the experiences have helped other families and how that timing is the best timing. And the introduction that you have done of yourself at the beginning is also super important. I am an expert in working with families and determining the right timing to talk to the families. That is why I am here.
And that's independence. That's taking charge and owning the process, and being decisive and being an advocate. And so that's Absolutely. You're talking about leveraging more of those behaviors and seeing yourself as the expert and conveying that to the team. Shante, did you have opinions on that?
Yes. So one of the things I would want to know is the why, a little bit more behind their why, what the resistance is about. And, maybe they've had a past experience that wasn't so favorable. And then being able to navigate, and again, continue to advocate, but being able to answer questions, to even minimize any or navigate through any misconceptions or misperceptions they may have had from a past experience. So, and leading forward, even as Derek has just spoke about, taking charge and leading and guiding them. while also helping them and them feeling supported and understanding why this is more or less the appropriate time to move forward with the conversation. Understanding what's behind that resistance also, I think, is important. And
Yeah.
being able to navigate it, not for just this situation, for even potential future situations with this physician or this nurse or chaplain, whomever it may be.
Mm-hmm. So thank you for that. And we were talking about how we connect with the care team to learn what we can in order to be confident in our conversation, not necessarily to memorize a script, to go in with, but to just have a functional level of knowledge about the family and about the the potential donor. But sometimes the care team might believe that there aren't any viable organs before you even have that conversation. So Arthur's wondering, how do you overcome that, that assumption that there aren't going to be organs that are viable? How do you manage that?
I think it's important to let them know that, if there weren't any organs that weren't viable, that we would not be there in this space and in that situation, and then to come back to storytelling. I mean, even letting them know the oldest donor where we recovered organs from or a heart that has been used, sharing a story with them, I think really changes things in those situations when they're utilizing age or they're utilizing, this patient is in multi-organ system failure. Being able to mitigate that by sharing the stories.
Exactly. And also adding on to what Chantel said, just letting them know that, even with that organ that you may think is not functioning as well, but it can be a bridge for another patient so that they won't die until they get another super good, healthy organ. But this is why we are here, to be able to save lives and just advocating and really clearly articulating why this is super important to do that. And like Chantel said, we are here. If this wasn't a possibility, and all the cases we work with anyway are cases that we evaluate. There's no guarantee with any organ that we work with until we get that organ and review that organ. So that's what we do.
Mm-hmm. So Tanya is wondering what words of wisdom can be shared when end of life decisions are made and the family is ready to extubate immediately. How do you have a conversation with them about that decision?
Very
Is that
quickly.
is that with the family or with the
family? The family's made that decision and they're just ready to immediately extubate.
Yeah, you just one of the things you can do is just to ask for a gift of time, just to give us just a little bit more time to sit down with them, to talk to them, if it's possible, if I can walk them to a consultation room apart from the patient, so that we can sit down and talk through, and that sometimes the timing may seem very weird for the family, but for us to engage the family, they have to have made the decision to withdraw. We wouldn't come in and put the cart before the horse. We want to come in when we know that the family has made that decision so that they don't feel like they are not doing anything because they wanted organs from our loved one. So it may seem like we are behind, but this is the timing that we are coming to present this. What we are asking now is a gift of time from you, that you can work with us and that we can be able to do something here that can produce results that would help you in your healing process as much as it helps those you are going to impact as well.
Yeah, I like the concept of the gift of time, because that's them giving back, and everybody likes to give. So it's a nice phrase that might open their willingness to have a conversation. Shantae, did you have an opinion there?
No, truly about the gift of time. And then, even with that gift of time, there are still sometimes those families that are, going to put a limit on that time. So, being able to work with your clinical team and your recovery staff in the hospital to be able to meet if there are time constraints that the family may give, and maybe that's 2 or 3 lives that can be saved versus if they gave more time, more lives could be saved. But again, some families may not have it to give. So just being prepared for that, walking into that space also.
And also just to tell the family, it's okay too. They can say goodbyes. We will be there to look after their loved one and we'll update them throughout the process. Or they can go home if they are not too far and we can invite them back when we are ready to withdraw and go to the OR. So give them options quickly that they can say, oh, after all, we can leave site, we can go home. Okay, because sometimes they are thinking they have to be there the whole time. So they say, no, 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 we can't stay another 12 hours here. So when you talk to them and quickly break it down and give them options, then they will find one that will stick with them and they would appreciate that.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have time for for one more, and Shani, I believe, has a question. There's a relatively new family services team, and they're wondering, how do you build their confidence? What are the things that you can do to provide real-time feedback, when you're not in the conversation with them? So how do you, when you're not part of what's happening in real time, how can you also try to build their confidence in the most meaningful and efficient way possible?
I think it's important to empower them to find their voice, empower them to be confident in what they know. And, again, maybe it's engaging with some simulation, to help them in those areas where it's identified that they need a little bit more training. But I think a key thing is empowering them to take ownership. I always talked about this being their practice, and how would they like to represent themselves in their practice. So I think really empowering them to take the lead, to find their voice, and to be able to go forward, as that independent practitioner.
And also confidence is also part of that. Like Shundrin said, confidence, just to be in that space and just be able to stand out and just be able to do the right pacing, the right timing of bringing donation, the right listening. Where you need silence, it's okay to have that moment of silence. But again, be able to just convey the message with your positivity and energy and everything else from your body expressions that should deliver that message, how critical this is and how special this is, because this is 1 in 1,000, not many families that we can sit down with for this kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
As many as people die, donation is only a few people who qualify to be. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Yeah, I would add as well, and this doesn't necessarily apply only to folks in a family services role, but for really any job. I would recommend just having a feedback cadence that you use, where you may have a debrief on a conversation, and if you have a cadence where you're identifying a couple of things that they did really well, and maybe one recommendation for something they could do better, when your acknowledgement of the things that they're doing well is more than the things that they can do better, that's going to help build their confidence as well. And again, that kind of transcends any job. So maybe just starting simple and as part of the debrief process, recognize, how you would have managed that conversation and reinforce the positive things that they did as well. Well, This was great. Derek and Shantae, thank you so much for your time and the valuable information that you shared with the audience today. We really do appreciate it. As always, we'll be sending out a survey to get some feedback about this session and some suggestions for future topics. But just as a reminder that this is part of the 3-part series, so we will be talking about overcoming objections in April, and then transitioning to yes in May. So be looking out for announcements about those upcoming events. So again, thank you everybody for your time today. Thanks for your good questions. Really enjoyed it, and we'll look forward to talking with you again next time. Bye.
Thank you.